Have you ever wondered why some people seem to, bounce back from illness while others really struggle, even with the exact same condition?
Or why knowing something is bad for you, like really bad, doesn't always stop you doing it.
Exactly. It's a puzzle, isn't it? Something we probably all think about sometimes.
Absolutely. And those kinds of questions, they're really at the core of health psychology. It's this field that tries to understand the bigger picture of health and illness.
Right. And that's what we're doing today, our deep dive. We're exploring how our minds, our social worlds, and our biology all kind of mesh together.
How they affect our health, when we get sick, how we cope.
All of that. And our main source for this is The Psychology of Health and Illness by Jane Ogden. That's a really great book. Gives a perspective that goes way beyond just the physical body stuff.
Ogden's work is, I think, really valuable because it pushes us to rethink some common assumptions about health.
How's
Well, it encourages us to look past just the purely physical causes, the germs and genes, and really consider how powerful our thoughts and behaviors actually are.
Okay. So the mission for this deep dive then is to pull out the key ideas from health psychology, the things that give us maybe a fuller picture.
A more comprehensive understanding, yeah. Why we get sick, how we deal with it, what shapes our health outcomes in the long run.
So we're going to unpack some pretty interesting concepts, ideas that offer maybe a new lens to see health and well-being, moving beyond that traditional medical view.
Definitely. And a good place to start is how health psychology actually challenges that traditional view, the biomedical model. This is pretty foundational.
Okay, let's break that down. The biomedical model.
Mhm.
What are its core assumptions based on Ogden? First is that illness has a single physical cause. Is that right?
That's the main one, yeah. A specific germ, a virus, maybe a chemical imbalance or, a faulty gene. It's very targeted.
Focused.
Yeah.
Like cause and effect.
A very direct line. And following from that, the model often sees people as, well, not really responsible for their illness.
I mean,
It's something that just happens to them, like an attack from outside or some internal breakdown. They're victims, essentially.
right. Like if your car breaks down, it's not the car's fault.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so logically, the way to fix it is through physical interventions.
Things like medication or surgery.
Yeah,
Things that directly target that physical problem.
exactly. And the responsibility for making that fix happen, that lies mainly with the doctors, the medical professionals. They have the tools.
Okay. And this is where it gets interesting for psychology.
Yeah.
The biomedical view tends to see our thoughts, our feelings, as just a consequence of being ill,
Right. Something that happens because you're sick.
not something that could have maybe contributed to getting sick in the first place.
Yeah.
Or how you recover.
Precisely. So you get a chronic illness, you might feel depressed, sure. But that depression isn't seen as part of the illness itself, just a reaction to it.
Okay. That's a really key point where health psychology offers a different view.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's flip it. How does health psychology answer that first question? What causes illness? How's it different from that single cause idea?
Well, it really zooms out, doesn't it? Instead of just one cause, it looks at the whole system.
Mm.
It says illness usually stems from a combination of things. Biological factors, yes, like the virus,
Shit's there?
but also psychological factors, things like our behaviors, our habits, what we believe about health.
Our thoughts, our feelings.
Yeah. And social factors, too, like the support we get from people around us, our family, friends.
So the key takeaway there is that our mind and our social situation aren't just passive observers.
No, they're active players.
Yeah.
Right from the start, all the way through.
Which changes the whole dynamic from a simple chain reaction to something much more interactive.
Definitely. So if the cause is broader, how does that affect the idea of who's responsible?
Well, if our behaviors play a part.
Like smoking or diet?
Exactly. Then health psychology suggests we can have some responsibility for our health. Not in a blaming way, though.
Right. It's not about blame. More about acknowledging that our choices, the things we do day to day, they have an impact.
Mm-hmm. And that naturally leads to thinking differently about treatment, too, doesn't it?
Yeah. So what's the treatment approach look like then?
It's not just about fixing the physical anymore. Health psychology emphasizes treating the whole person.
Okay, so what does that involve?
It means helping people change unhealthy behaviors. Maybe addressing their beliefs about their illness, how they're coping.
And even making sure they actually, take their meds or follow the doctor's advice.
Adherence, exactly. So the responsibility for treatment, for getting better, it kind of shifts to.
Yeah, it seems like it. The person who ill becomes more of an active participant.
Right. They have a role. making lifestyle changes, working on their mindset, taking the medication.
They're not just passively receiving care, they're involved.
Involved, exactly. And finally, that role of psychology.
Hmm.
How does health psychology see it fitting into the whole picture?
Well, it sees our thoughts, feelings, behaviors. They're important at every single stage.
Not just after you get sick.
No. From when we're healthy, trying to stay well, to when symptoms first appear, through the whole experience of being ill and during recovery. Psychology is woven through the whole thing.
It's integral, not an add-on.
Exactly.
Which nicely brings us to the 4 key theoretical frameworks that really support this way of thinking. The first one, maybe the most well-known, is the biopsychosocial model.
Ah, yes, the BPS model. Engel, right, back in the 70s.
That's the one, Engel, 1977. It was a really landmark way of formally integrating the psychological and the social and the environment with the traditional bio.
Okay, so let's break that down. Bio is the biological stuff.
Yeah, things like genetics, viruses, bacteria, structural problems in the body, the physical machinery, if you like.
Got it. And psycho.
That covers our cognition, so our thoughts, beliefs, expectations about health, our emotions, maybe fear about treatment or anxiety, and really importantly, our behaviors.
Like smoking, diet, exercise, drinking.
All those lifestyle factors,
Right.
yes.
And the social part.
That's the broader context. Things like social norms. Is smoking normal in your group? Pressures to change, maybe from family or peers. Social values around health in general.
And even bigger things like social class, where you live, your ethnicity.
Exactly. All those societal and environmental factors. It makes you think, doesn't it? How many of these things are probably playing a role in our own health or people we know?
It's a really complex web, not just one thing.
Yeah, definitely not. Okay, the second key framework is this idea of health and illness being on a continuum.
Ah, right. Not like separate boxes, healthy over here, sick over there.
Exactly. It's more like a sliding scale. We're all somewhere on that line between optimal health and severe illness.
And thinking about it that way helps us see how psychological factors can kind of nudge us along that scale.
Precisely. Ogden highlights several points where psychology matters. Like even before illness starts illness onset.
How so?
Well, our beliefs about health, our lifestyle choices, our stress levels, they can all make us more or less vulnerable to getting sick in the first place.
Okay. And then what about when we actually feel something's wrong? Like deciding to go to the doctor.
That's another key point. Help seeking. That decision isn't purely physical. It involves how we perceive our symptoms.
Like, is this cough serious or just a cold?
Right. Our illness cognitions, what we think might be wrong, and even how we feel about interacting with doctors or the healthcare system.
So even just getting help involves psychology.
Absolutely. And once someone is diagnosed, psychology is crucial for illness adaptation.
Meaning how they cope.
How they cope, whether they make behavior changes, the social support they have, even how they experience things like pain.
Wow. And it keeps going.
Our ongoing stress, our health behaviors, they can influence illness progression, how the illness develops over time.
And ultimately the outcome.
Ultimately, the health outcomes, things like quality of life, even longevity, it really shows that deep connection between mind and body all the way through.
It really does.
So the third framework zooms in even more on that mind-body link. It looks at the direct and indirect pathways between psychology and health.
Okay, pathways. Let's unpack that. Direct pathway. What does that mean?
That's where our psychological experiences, like feeling stressed, can directly cause physiological changes in our body.
Oh, like the stress response itself, hormones and stuff.
Exactly. That physiological response can then impact our health systems, like our immune system or cardiovascular health. Chronic stress, for example, can directly wear the body down.
Okay, so mind directly affects body. What about the indirect pathway?
The indirect pathway is more about how our thoughts and feelings influence our behaviors. And then those behaviors are what impact our health. So you feel stressed, psychology.
So you start smoking more or eating junk food, behavior.
Right. And those behaviors then lead to negative health consequences.
Got it. So it's like a chain. Mind influences actions, actions influence body.
Precisely. And both pathways are important. They both show how tightly linked our mental and physical states are. It's not a one-way street.
Makes sense.
And the fourth key idea, the fourth framework, really highlights something crucial. We're not all the same. It focuses on variability.
Variability, meaning the differences between people.
Exactly. How people differ in their behaviors, their experiences, and their health outcomes, even when facing similar situations or illnesses.
Right. Because medicine sometimes looks for the general rule, doesn't it? What works for most people.
It often does. But health psychology really emphasizes that individual differences matter hugely.
Okay. Can you give an example?
Ogden uses some really clear ones. Think about two people who smoke. Both know it's bad for them, but one manages to quit, the other doesn't. Or two people find a lump. One goes straight to the doctor, the other waits maybe for weeks or months.
Right. Or even after a diagnosis, like a heart attack.
Yes. Two people have a heart attack, maybe similar severity, but their recovery paths, their quality of life afterwards can be vastly different.
So just knowing the facts or having the illness isn't enough to predict what someone will do or how they'll fare.
Not at all. There have to be other factors explaining that variability.
And health psychology points to psychological factors.
Exactly. Things like cognitions, what people believe, their expectations, emotions, learning history, peer pressure, social norms, how people cope. Social support networks.
Wow, it's a long list.
It is. And it really underlines why a sort of one-size-fits-all approach to health promotion or treatment often falls short.
Yeah.
We need to account for these individual differences.
These frameworks really start to make sense when you apply them, like with the case study Ogden uses, Mr. A.
Ah, yes, Mr. A and his lung cancer. It's a really powerful illustration of all these concepts in action.
So remind us, he grew up somewhere where smoking was just normal.
Very normal in his community in India. His parents smoked, apparently to relax after work.
Yeah, he saw it all the time.
He did. And he started young, maybe around 12, offered a cigarette by a friend. It became a social thing with his peers.
And even his parents gave him cigarettes later on.
Yeah, it sounds like it became a way to connect, especially with his father. So for him, smoking wasn't just a chemical addiction. It was deeply tied into his social life, his identity, his family bonds.
That makes changing it much harder, I imagine.
Immensely harder. Then, later in life, maybe mid-40s, he develops a cough.
But he doesn't think much of it.
No, not initially. He puts it down to the weather or just getting older. That's an illness cognition right there, how he interprets the symptom.
And because his parents smoked for years and seemed okay?
His perception of the risk was probably quite low. He maybe thought, well, it didn't hurt them much. So even as the cough got worse, he delayed seeking help.
That delay. Another psychological factor.
Definitely. Eventually, the cough gets really bad. He starts having chest pain. He finally goes to the doctor.
And they recommend tests.
Yeah.
An x-ray.
Yes, but then he misses several appointments. Life gets in the way. Perhaps avoidance. It's complex. That's delayed help seeking again.
So finally, he gets the x-ray.
And it shows lung cancer. He's told strongly to stop smoking.
But he finds it almost impossible.
Incredibly difficult, especially because, as Ogden notes, everyone around him, his social network, they still smoke. The social norms are powerful.
That highlights the challenge of behavior change in context, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And sadly, his health declines.
Yeah.
He has to stop working, feels isolated, his quality of life suffers greatly.
And he passed away relatively young at 55. It's a stark story.
It is. And Ogden uses it to pinpoint all those psychological constructs we've discussed.
Let's see. His health beliefs about smoking.
The peer pressure early on.
The reinforcement he got, socializing, relaxing.
The perceived benefits, the social norms, how it became a deeply ingrained habit.
Then his illness beliefs about the cough, his risk perception.
Or lack of it, perhaps. His help-seeking behavior, the delays.
The doctor's advice, and his difficulty with adherence, sticking to the advice.
His declining quality of life, and ultimately, the health outcome.
It really paints a clear picture of that interplay. The biological, the cancer developing.
His psychological, his beliefs, his coping, the habit strength.
And the social, the family influence, the community norms. They all fed into his specific situation and outcome.
It perfectly illustrates the biopsychosocial model in a real-world context.
So understanding health this way, what are the main goals? What is health psychology actually trying to do?
Well, Ogden lays out 7 key aims for the field.
Okay. What's the first one?
First, to really assess and understand the role behavior plays in causing illness in the first place.
Right. Figuring out how behavior contributes.
Second.
Second, to predict unhealthy behaviors. Who is likely to smoke or eat poorly or not exercise?
Okay, predict them. And third, I imagine, is to change them.
Exactly. Third is to develop effective ways to change unhealthy behaviors. Intervention is key.
Makes sense. What's fourth? Fourth is to understand the experience of illness itself. What's it actually like for someone living with a condition?
Okay, understand the subjective experience. And fifth.
Fifth flows from that. To improve the experience of illness, make life better for people who are sick.
Improve quality of life, manage symptoms.
Precisely. Sixth is about understanding the predictors of illness outcomes. Why do some people with the same illness do better than others?
Ah, back to that variability idea. Identify what predicts good or poor outcomes.
And finally, the seventh aim ties it all together to actually improve those illness outcomes. Better recovery, longer life, better functioning.
Those are really practical aims. It's not just academic theory.
Not at all. Health psychology is very much focused on application, using this understanding to genuinely help people, promote health, and improve well-being.
Yeah, it comes back to that bigger picture, doesn't it? Seeing health and illness as this complex thing where our minds, bodies, and social worlds are all deeply interconnected.
Exactly. So just to quickly recap the core ideas we've gone through, health psychology gives us this powerful alternative to the purely biomedical view.
Highlighting the biopsychosocial, all interacting.
Viewing health and illness on a continuum, not as separate states, with psychology playing a role all along that spectrum.
Understanding those direct and indirect pathways for how our minds affect our bodies.
And really focusing on variability, the crucial differences between individuals that shape their health journeys.
It really emphasizes that health is this dynamic interplay of mind, body, and environment.
And knowing this, understanding these frameworks can be really empowering for you listening.
How so?
It gives you a more holistic way to think about your own health and maybe the health of people you care about. Recognizing these psychological and social factors, it opens up new avenues.
New ways to think about promoting wellness or managing illness.
Absolutely. Beyond just the pills or procedures.
So, a final thought for everyone listening. Considering all these different factors, biological, psychological, social, change, what's maybe one small shift? A change in thinking, perhaps, or a tiny change in behavior.
That might just create a positive ripple effect for your overall health journey.
Yeah. And if illness isn't just a biological thing, what does that suggest about the role we can play, the agency we have in staying well?
Definitely something to mull over. We really encourage you to reflect on these ideas, maybe see how they apply to health issues you find interesting.
This deep dive is really just scratching the surface of a fascinating field.